Hello, it's the Comics Kid 2099, and I am here to review another episode of Batman the Animated Series. In my review of the first episode of this series, I mentioned that I didn't care for how the episodes, as they are presented on the DVD, seem to be out of order from when you actually take in sequence of the events. In the first episode, the police consider Batman to be a threat and spend most of their time chasing down Batman. In this episode, we suddenly have Batman's teen sidekick, Robin, and the police are actually playing the role of damsel in distress in this episode. It really does feel like I'm watching an episode that should be in the next DVD box set, especially when, as we'll find when I keep watching these episodes, Robin doesn't show up again for another 22 episodes. I know that it's my modern sensibilities and what I come to expect from television shows that is keeping me from getting past this. In the early 1990s, long-running storylines in television were hardly a thing in live action and were unheard of in animated television shows. It just wasn't expected that you needed to watch episodes in the order that they were aired. You could air episodes out of order, and in fact that's what would happen when you would watch reruns of shows. And yet, it's still hard for me to go from one episode of Batman being an outlaw who works alone to being much more of an ally to the police and working with a partner in the form of Robin as well. It would have been nice, I think, if this Robin appearance had been saved for later when he began appearing in this show much more frequently. I understand the reason he is here. Batman sees the world in the worst possible light, and he refuses to believe there's even anything good in the world. Robin, being the light-hearted sidekick that he is here to try and get Bruce to lighten up a little bit. And that's what he's doing when he tries to get Bruce to watch It's a Wonderful Life. In fact, if I had a real complaint about this episode, it's that I don't feel like I get to know the character of Robin at all. Part of it has to do with this being only 22 minutes long, and having to squeeze in an arc for Batman and a story for Batman and Robin to participate in. But other than being, air quotes, the guy who tries to get Bruce to lighten up, Robin really doesn't have any depth in this episode. I certainly hope that later episodes in this series will convince me otherwise. But right now, I am feeling like this series would have been better off being the solo adventures of Batman. And if you still want to do this episode, as I'm sure people have nostalgia for this particular episode, you could just have Alfred fill the role of, air quotes, guy who tries to get Batman to lighten up. He honestly feels like even less of a character here than he did in the previous episode, so it would have been nice to have him do something here since Robin doesn't really cut the mustard. It may sound like I didn't like this episode, and I certainly liked it less than On Leather Wings, but I still think this is mostly a solid episode with only a few minor things for me to complain about. There's the aforementioned bit about how this feels like it should not come immediately after On Leather Wings, and how I feel like Robin doesn't really belong in this episode. And it's a little sad that the only real detective work we've seen Batman do in 2 episodes is A, bring all of the work to some scientists to do, and B, in this episode, he only finds the Joker's hideout because the Joker gives him a huge hint where he is hiding on the broadcast. I'm not saying we need a convoluted mystery that would take several minutes just to explain, but if this series is going to insist on having Batman be something of a detective, as it seems like it's at least trying to go down that road a little bit, then it'd be nice if Batman could actually do some detective work and not pawn it off or only find the bad guy because the bad guy told him where to look. And I'm not much of a fan of the episode essentially coming down to, and then Batman learned the meaning of Christmas. But really, despite all appearances, I like this episode mostly. I feel like this does a pretty good job of giving us the Joker that I feel is the air quotes true Joker, without having to come so far as to spell it out, like Kevin Smith's Cacophony, which I also felt got the Joker right. The Joker is having fun with his insanity. Too many versions of the Joker, like the one in The Dark Knight, Brian Azzarello's graphic novel version, or even Frank Miller's version in The Dark Knight Returns, they all feel too joyless. It can't be easy to get across humor that makes me laugh while simultaneously trying to communicate to the audience that the Joker is actually scary. But I feel like this episode does a pretty good job of it. When Joker has his hand talk or draws the face on his chin, I think those moments are genuinely funny. But Joker trying to kill Gordon, Bullock, and Gleason, and trying to kill everyone on the train, that's also very scary. This episode gets both aspects right, and once again, it makes it look so easy. This episode also gives us the first glimpse of Arkham Asylum, although it's not really apparent just how twisted and messed up this place really is. While it's not explicitly mentioned in the episode, I have to assume that the security guards at Arkham, or at least some of them, they must be corrupt and are helping Joker and presumably other inmates escape if they are paid well enough. Something very similar to this is done in Dan Slott's Arkham Asylum Living Hell, where it is made very clear that one of the only reasons so many of the inmates at Arkham can escape is because of the compliance of the security guards. This is also an aspect that is later returned to in Sam Keefe's Arkham Asylum Madness graphic novel. In this episode, Joker escapes via a rocket-powered Christmas tree, which he could not have possibly built from within the confines of Arkham unless at least one of the guards was on the take. This is a great subtle way of showing us the inner workings of this city without coming out and saying it out loud. After all, they only had 22 minutes to deal with the plot, and we couldn't afford to waste that on a subplot about a corrupt security guard. But if we think long and hard about Joker's escape, then it becomes apparent to us. That is smart writing. Overall, I'd say this episode is a significant step down from On Leather Wings, and its only real positive qualities is how the Joker is handled, and other minute things like the way Joker's escape can be read on another level. This is a fine introductory episode for the Joker if you want something different than the live-action interpretations, and you are watching this series in order as it is presented on the DVD. So it earns points for that as well. But overall, I think I can safely say this is not the strongest episode of this series, and I can look forward to much better episodes on down the line.